to that course of action? Appears to be none. They can be tabled. Question number 7, Eugenie Sage.
Tanaka, Mr Speaker, thank you. My question is to the Minister for the Environment and asks, why do the government's proposals for improving freshwater management allow New Zealand rivers to have higher concentrations of nitrogen pollution than China's Yangtze River?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Speaker, as usual, the member is deliberately scaremongering on water quality.
Order.
While the Yangtze River indeed has serious pollution issues, nitrogen is not the only pollutant there is, and even according to the WWF, it is not the pollutant of particular concern for the Yangtze River, where the issue, in fact, is primarily around industrial and sewage waste and the management of sediments. The government's proposals for freshwater management will improve water quality, not allow the degradation of New Zealand rivers, something that member's party failed to do for 9 years, propping up a Labour government. Furthermore, the nitrate toxicity threshold in the bottom lines is only one of the ways that nitrogen must be managed to meet the national bottom lines, and most rivers will need to be more aggressively managed for nitrogen levels to meet periphyton standards, a fact that the member either doesn't understand or deliberately chooses to ignore.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Thank you. Will she review her proposed nitrate toxicity bans and the national bottom lines for rivers, which Fish and Game has described as an abject failure and effectively a licence to pollute in relation to farm nitrate pollution?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Amy Adams.
Well, Mr Speaker, the first point I'd make in response to that question is that they are not my nitrate toxicity levels. They are the levels that have been devised by an expert panel made up of more than 60 water quality scientists. They are levels that none of my colleagues or I have had any input into the specific levels of. And furthermore, Mr Speaker, as I mentioned in the primary question, the nitrate toxicity level is only one of the ways that nitrogen is measured in our rivers.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Eugenie Sage.
Thank you. Will she change her proposals, given that nitrogen pollution can have significant impacts on river health at much lower levels than her proposed bottom line of nitrate being toxic to fish and aquatic life?
Honourable Amy Adams.
Well, Mr Speaker, the NOF levels have been out for consultation. We are now working through the submissions that have come in and no final decisions have been made. But again, I would reiterate for the member, where the nitrate toxicity level is set, which is only one of the ways that nitrogen is controlled, is at a level where there is full species protection for 80%, and for the remaining 20%, it is the level at which you would start to see some impact on growth. I think it is a very reasonable level, and it is the level that was chosen by the expert science panel and the work that they did to come up with these levels.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Tariana Tirio.
Mr Speaker, does the Minister agree with Te Wai Māori that if the government waits to develop additional attributes, there is a danger that nothing will happen? And if so, will she agree that the implementation deadline be dropped from 2030 to 2020?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Speaker, I don't agree that nothing will happen. There's two aspects to that question. One is around developing additional attributes, and I certainly agree and have been saying for some time that the NOF will continue to be a developing tool, and there will certainly need to be more work done, but we need to start now with what we have. In respect to the timeline for implementation, that's something we can certainly continue to talk about, but I would point out to the member that in actual fact the information I have suggests that most councils are well on track to having these guidelines in place between 2016 and 2020. There is a review set in 2016 where we can certainly look at it, but the indications that I'm seeing suggest that councils are actually taking to this with some vigour.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Will she strengthen her weak water quality proposals, given that the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment has described them, and I quote, as not adequate for protecting water quality to even current levels in New Zealand?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Amy Adams.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the best way to address that question is to remind the House what the national bottom line on nitrogen pollution was under the Labour Greens government, which was do what you like. There was zero limit from a national government, from the central government. They had no interest in requiring councils to lift their standards. This government is lifting them. And can I remind members also that quite apart from bottom lines, we still have an obligation to maintain or enhance. No river quality is allowed to deteriorate under this framework, despite the members' scaremongering.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Well, if the Minister is so confident that her proposals will maintain water quality, how does she respond to the submission and analysis of the New Zealand Freshwater Sciences Society, the professional body of freshwater scientists, which says her proposals have, I quote, the potential for New Zealand rivers to become some of the most nitrogen polluted among OECD countries?
Mr. Speaker,
Honourable Amy Adams.
very easily I respond by saying they are simply wrong.
Order. Question number 8, Colin King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tertiary Education, Skills and Employment and asks, what steps is the government taking to